Someone's hiding in the bushes with a telephoto lens, while their editor assures them the means justifies the ends. 'Cause we only hunt celebrities, it's all a bit of fun, and Scousers never buy the sun. While the parents of the missing girl cling desperately to hope, and the copper takes improper payments in a thick brown envelope, and no one in the newsroom asks where's this headline from, and Scousers never buy the sun. Tabloids making money, betting bollocks baffles brains, and they cynically hold up their hands if anyone complains, and they say all we're doing is giving people what they want. Well, they're crying out for justice, people crying out for justice, and the man they call the digger casts a proprietary eye over what happens in the gutter and what goes on in the sky. And he claims he's fit and proper, and the watchdog sings his song, but Scousers never buy the sun.
Saturday the 15th of April 1989 was the semi-final between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest at Hillsborough Football Stadium. The match commander was Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield, who was new in his post and had limited experience in policing football matches. Although Liverpool was a far larger club compared to Nottingham Forest, the Liverpool supporters were located at the smaller end of the football stadium, this being the west stand, which was seated in a Lepping Lanes terrace, a fenced standing area. However, there was no system prepared by the police to make sure that the fans were evenly distributed in the pens. Due to the lack of preparation, there was no way the police could count how many people were in each pen. 10,000 fans were escorted by the police to the designated area. The 10,000 fans proceeded to the limited space of just 7 malfunctioning turnstiles. The turnstiles became congested and people were starting to be crushed. In response to alienate the crush, the police opened exit gate C. But due to poor signage, the fans entered the gate and into pen 3 and 4, which were full. This began the human crush, and the emergency response was slow. In result of this disaster, 96 men, women and children died, and many were traumatised. This is the worst disaster in British sporting history, yet the police did not take responsibility for their errors and reported that the fans had broken down Gate C. From here, the lie was repeated to media, and within minutes, it was broadcasted around the world. Media headlines and prominent figures referred to the fans as aggressive, drunken beasts, and that Liverpool fans had killed Liverpool fans. 9 newspapers conveyed the police's version of the event, and there was one newspaper that took it one step further, The Sun. Just a few days after the incident, The Sun published The Truth, which was compact with lies and demonised the victims of the Hillsborough disaster. This shaped the inquiries and the investigations. Merseyside was outraged by their disrespect and their false fabrications, and this led to an immediate boycott of The Sun, and also led to Liverpool Football Club banning The Sun in 2017. It took 23 years for The Sun to apologise, and 27 years for the actual truth to be declared in 2016.
Do you buy The Sun?
No.
Do you know that Liverpool boycotted The Sun?
No.
Do you know about Hillsborough and the Hillsborough disaster in 1989?
Yes, a little bit of it.
Do you buy The Sun?
No.
Do you know that Liverpool boycotted The Sun?
Yes.
Do you know about the Hillsborough disaster in 1989?
Yeah.
Do you buy The Sun?
No.
Do you know that Liverpool boycotted The Sun?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Do you know about the Hillsborough disaster in 1989?
Yeah.
Do you buy The Sun?
Yes.
Do you know that Liverpool boycotted The Sun?
No.
Do you know what caused the disaster at Hillsborough?
No, to be honest, I don't really know that much about it or really what happened.
Do you buy the Sun?
No.
Do you know that Liverpool boycotted the Sun?
No.
Do you know what caused the Hillsborough disaster?
No.
I decided to do interviews with survivors, family members of the victims, people who were at Hillsborough and helped at Hillsborough, and Liverpool football fans as my base of my documentary, because I wanted people who didn't understand or wanted to know more to learn from a more personal point of view and from personal experience, and to understand the effect of fake news and lies and what fighting for justice can do to people's families. And 27 years is not a short time, and we only live once, and they fought for 27 years for the truth. And I hope you can see that in these interviews, and I hope you get the whole reason of why people did fight for so long. You've spent 27 years fighting for justice for your son James and the 96 victims who died at Hillsborough in 1989. Can you just tell me please about the day of Hillsborough and what happened that day?
Well, I think, it's quite obvious now, and I think a lot of people should understand what happened at Hillsborough, especially football supporters, because they should realise why it's all seated stage at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for safety reasons, for fans, not just from Liverpool, but for all over the country. Because at Hillsborough, there was a crush in pen 3 and 4. And obviously too many people were allowed into that pen. And I can't go into too much detail about it because we're still going forward, obviously, with hopefully charges against certain people. So I have to be very careful what I say. But my son went off to his first away game to Sheffield Wednesday to watch Liverpool play Nottingham Forest. And my son came back 5 days later in a coffin. And people start to realise and read books on Hillsborough, read a lot of books about what Professor Phil Scraton had written, and also the recommendations that the Bishop has made recently to the new Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, and to Theresa May, the Prime Minister. If people read all of these things, they'll understand why families have been fighting. It's not just about James, it's about 96 innocent people who died. And I urge people to read up on Hillsborough. Those who don't understand anything about Hillsborough, please read up on Hillsborough, and you'll understand why families have been fighting for all of these years, because it goes beyond Hillsborough, it goes beyond football supporters. It's about safety, that everybody has a right to come home in safety back to their parents or to their wives or to their children. They should come back in safety no matter what it is. But I do urge, especially the youngsters, I'd like them to realise what it was like going to a football game, and then in the 70s, in the 80s, they were treated appalling. And hopefully we have changed things since the fight of Hillsborough.
It was a very normal day. I'd been there the year before. We played Nottingham Forest the year before, and there was no issues. It's a little bit football match if you went to them in them days. It was a lot less organised than it is now. Yeah. It's a lot safer. But in them days, it was quite normal for a crush to be outside the turnstiles. It was quite normal for people to be coming in. It was just normal circumstances. And there didn't seem anything on the outset too untoward. When I came into the ground, I was sitting in the north stand, and I had a brother and brother-in-law who were in the Leppings Lane, and I had a brother who was with me in the stand, and another brother, that's right, sitting with me in the stand. And we've seen all this unrest going on, and I didn't really appreciate what was going on. My brother appreciates, he's a policeman, and he said that's not right. And then when they stopped the game, a couple of minutes after stopping the game, we decided to go down and see what we could do. So we went out on the pitch and done the what everybody else was doing, I suppose. That's just carrying people across. We tried to help a few people. Gave mouth to mouth to I think 3 people, or tried to resuscitate them. Didn't manage to resuscitate any of them. And that's it. If the same thing happened again now, I don't know how to do it, but I didn't know then. And I worked with the St John's ambulance guy, who we tended 3 people. I know who those people are, but that's not for public discussion. And I was doing the press chest and the chest pressing, and the St John's guy was doing the actual mouth-to-mouth stuff. So we formed a little team, to try and do it. But unfortunately, they were either too far gone, or we just couldn't get them back, and that was it. It was very sad.
So you've spent 27 years fighting for justice for your brother Graham and the 96 victims as well, who died at Hillsborough in 1989. Can you please tell me about the day of Hillsborough?
It was a lovely sunny day. I knew Graham was going to an away football match. Graham went to matches home and away, even overseas. He was at Heysel as well, so he followed the Reds, all the time. And I knew there was an away match because my dad made sandwiches, and so I'd open the fridge on a Saturday morning, and if there were sandwiches there, I knew he'd be travelling somewhere. If I was up before him, I'd just go and see if he wanted a coffee. And on that particular morning, I'd asked, did he want a coffee, and he asked the time, and he didn't need to be up that early, so I just said, sorry for disturbing you, and I went out. I was on a training course in Manchester. It was a lovely day. We had part of the afternoon sat outside during this training course, which probably would have been around the time that the incident at Hillsborough was going on, but obviously I knew nothing. 5 o'clock, we get in the car to travel home. My friend was driving, and she wanted to put a cassette on instead of listening to the radio. I said, no, can we listen to that? And she said, why? And I said, because Graham's there. And she said, how do you know Graham's there? I said, because there were butties in the fridge. So to her, I wasn't making any sense, but from the minute I heard that there was trouble at a football game, I didn't even know where Graham was. I wasn't following football that closely then. I just knew Graham was at an away match, and it was as though the pair of us knew. And it was a Beaver leader training course, and Graham had been a cub and a scout, so he knew Susie, the lady I was travelling with. And for the whole of the journey home, we were just talking about Graham and memories of him as a cub, and other than that, we were in silence. And I got home, and my mum and dad were sat on the doorstep smoking, which, again, because it was a nice day, and obviously they were smoking because they were worried. Well, they always smoked anyway, but they were obviously extra worried. I went in and watched a bit of the tally just to get the telephone number for the emergency services, and my dad said, turn the telly off, it's too distressing. And then we spent the rest of the evening trying to get through to the emergency services. By about 9 o'clock at night, I think, maybe it was a bit earlier, I can't really remember now, the emergency number was phoning us back asking for more information, and my dad was walking up to our local police station on the hour every hour, so he got quite friendly with the desk sergeant. I was explaining that Graham had a thick gold Belcher chain on, and he had a lump of, it was just extra bone behind his ear, so it was a really distinguishing feature. And I was saying, have you got any information for us? No, nothing. Graham's friends obviously were looking for him. At first they'd lost 2 friends, but Ken, one of his other friends, had fainted, and they managed to meet up with Ken. And then there was 8 of them, and they were frantically going from hospital to hospital, back to the ground, and then eventually they were asked to sit in a waiting room in a hospital, and then unbeknown to us, and I've only found this out since the 12th of September because none of the lads would talk about it, the police came to them and said, would one of you like to come with us? And it ended up 2 of Graham's friends went and unofficially identified Graham about 3 o'clock in the morning. We were never told officially. The lads then drove home somber in silence, devastated with what they'd found out. And when they did arrive home, it must have been about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. They went to Sandra's house, that was Graham's fiancée, because they couldn't face coming to our house. My mum, dad and I were sat in the dining room all night long. I should have been on my training course again on the Sunday, so at one point, trying to stay positive, I was saying, I'm going to go to bed now because everything's going to be okay and I'm going to be too tired from my course tomorrow. But I was only in bed about 10 minutes and I had to be with my mum and dad, and carried on phoning through to the emergency services, and we just sat in silence. I kept pulling the dog onto me, I remember that. And then it must have been about 6:30 in the morning, the doorbell went, and it was Sandra, Graham's fiancée. The lads had got back to Sandra's house, and Sandra was the same as us. Straight away she was out into the entry. Graham, why didn't you phone? And that's how the lads realised we didn't know anything, that we'd not been told anything. So Sandra came round to ours, just rang the doorbell. My dad answered the door and she just burst into tears. That's how we found out what had happened.
As a critical criminologist, you supported the independent panel during the inquest procedure between 2014 and 2016 to research the deaths in custody following the Hillsborough disaster in 1989. Can you tell me about your experience during the process of this inquest?
The word that I would use to describe the experience for most of the time was that it was harrowing. To witness the emotions of the families and the survivors, who often regularly attended the inquest as well, was very difficult. You're an outsider, but you're a part of a process, and you're witnessing that pain and that distress, the anger, the sadness, at times the joy, but by and large a very sort of distressing experience. It was very important to be there to listen to alternative discourses from the families, from the survivors, from the legal teams, and to be able to counter some of those official discourses. You know, a certain truth was constructed about Hillsborough, and part of being at the inquest was challenging that truth. That's about challenging powerful institutions, challenging those narratives that come from powerful state institutions.
You were born in 1994, which was 5 years after the Hillsborough disaster that happened in 1989. Although you did not literally experience the Hillsborough disaster yourself, how has the event impacted you being from Liverpool and being a Liverpool football fan?
Massively. So I think there's a stigma attached to people from Liverpool now due to the lies that were told in the Sun newspaper and various other articles throughout the country. Obviously, every time you meet someone now who's not from Liverpool, like, the first joke they'll ever make is, oh, where's my wallet? Or like, oh, you're not going to rob me. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like there's huge stigmas attached to Scousers and people from Liverpool now due to the fact of the lies that were told in the Sun. So I feel like as a city we've been hugely impacted by the lies that have been told.
When Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield lied about the event and stated that the fans forced the exit gate open, how did that make you feel?
When I heard about the fans had forced the gate open, I knew that that's not right. The families knew that wasn't right. But that lie spread everywhere, you know, and it went into especially certain newspapers. It spread all around the world. And what it done, it bewitched the fans of that day, our survivors of that day. And to me, it was about our city as well, the people from Merseyside. So we were determined to get the truth out. Yes, we kept knocking on doors. Yes, it took us all of them years, but we did eventually get the truth out. And now a lot of, because we were up against the establishment at the time, not just the establishment, but media also, which is part and parcel of their job, is to tell the truth of what happened. And that angered me, that they printed lies before finding out the facts.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to find out the facts before you print anything, because I always felt that was a part of us getting an injustice. And what saddens me more is they were prepared to carry on with them scenarios, if you like. I'll say the word scenarios, and to let our fans be blamed for the deaths of the 96, and let the 96 be blamed for their own deaths. And to me, that's a disgrace. That's another disaster that the families had to go through to change everything. But it didn't only change now for the good of Hillsborough, it's changed for the good of this nation.
Yeah.
That these things can never happen again. And I think the families have a lot to be proud of, because along this journey, all of these years, we've lost a lot of good families fighting to get to the truth. And unfortunately, some of them didn't hear the truth. They died. They died tormented because they wanted more than anything just to get to the truth. And if there was any warts, we were saying, give us the warts as well. We'll accept the warts as long as they're truthful warts. And yet there was no wart whatsoever.
The difficulty comes when not only do you not put your hands up and admit to the error, but you try to shift the blame onto the victims. And that's the bit with David Duckenfield that is unforgivable.
His immediate response was to say that Gate C, which led to hundreds of fans coming into the stadium through the tunnel into pens 3 and 4, that was forced open by fans. We know again from the evidence that the gate was actually opened by police officers. The immediate aftermath, the emergency response from everybody, not just the police, but the ambulance service, is very poor. A state of emergency is not called. So there is a need for those powerful institutions to protect themselves, to exonerate themselves from blame. And that's exactly what happened.
Angry. I think at this point in Liverpool's history, we were in a state of mourning. So people had lost, their mums, dads, brothers, sisters, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, cousins. And I feel like at this point in our history, we needed the rest of the country to come and be there for us, but instead the rest of the world were against us. There were stories being told, like you say, about us, apparently beating up PCs, giving a kiss of life, pickpocketing our own, and that we caused our own death. So everybody would basically had an attitude of it's your own fault, you're a disgrace for doing what you've done. But in fact, it was all a fabricated lie.
Graham and all his mates went through those gates, and Paul actually said to us, that's one of his friends who identified Graham, I heard the bolts on the gate, no fans. They must have been within about the first 200 people through the gates when they opened, and he said, I heard the bolt on that gate, and since the 12th of September, he said to me, it still haunts him now, that lie they got away with for all these years when they knew, obviously, and so we knew because they told us that wasn't the case. So first of all, you're angry and then you're frustrated, and we actually fell out with family because they were believing the lies that had been said. My mum's family came from Norwich, and my mum and dad fell out with my mum's brother who lived in Norwich because they were believing what was said in the papers. So they've got a lot to answer for.
So then from this claim, it reinforced with other media sources, and some newspapers focused on the fans and claimed that they were drunk and ticketless, and that the Craig Surge had literally killed themselves and others to be in the game. Then 4 days after, the Sun published the truth. So the Sun stated in the subheadings that some fans pickpocketed of the victims.
Graham had money in his pocket. My dad always said to us, make sure wherever you go, you always have enough money in reserve so that if you lose your friends, you can always get yourself home safely. So Graham had, I think it was a £20 note, folded in the corner of his wallet, as well as his spends for the day. So, that wasn't the case. He had a gold Belcher chain on, that was returned to us. I've still got it now. And so we knew. Just lies, just despicable lies, hurtful lies. Just slurring, the Liverpool fans and the people of Merseyside.
They also said that some fans urinated on the brave cops and that some fans beat up PCs, giving the kiss of life.
It was mainly the fans that were giving the kiss of life,
yeah.
CPR. The video footage is there, we've seen it, we've sat through these inquests and watched. We know exactly what happened. How can someone be so cruel to come out with despicable lies in the days and hours after 96 people that they should have been looking after have passed away? Well, they were unlawfully killed. They were killed.
The lies, those lies that the fans caused the deaths, have persisted over time. The Sun were not alone in terms of repeating that story. I see. Did it for the Sun was their headline, The Truth, which was incredibly offensive to the families, to the survivors, and to the wider area of Merseyside who were appalled by demonising the victims.
I felt appalled at those slurs. Obviously, I didn't see everything that happened in the ground, far from it. But I've followed Liverpool around the world since the very early 70s. I've never seen a Liverpool fan behave like that. I've never seen a Liverpool fan steal off Liverpool fans. I've just never seen it. It's out of character. It's got no grounds, it's got no basis. It was just sensationalism, wrongly reported, badly reported, wrong.
In result to the Sun's article, Liverpool prompted to boycott the Sun. Do you remember anything of when this began? Was the anger in the city? What did people do?
Well, yes, I do remember the boycott starting. As you said there, it wasn't only that certain newspaper, and I won't say the word because I hate saying it. That certain newspaper, it wasn't just them, because other newspapers as well, they just didn't print a headline, but they put it inside the pages. And, some of it was appalling. And when the people of Merseyside saw what that headline to that paper done, they decided that they've got to get rid of it because, you cannot print lies, as I said earlier on, without finding out the facts. And the people who knew were the people who were there. And yet nobody came to any one of us. They never went to the families. They just decided they'd print that and give Liverpool supporters a bad name.
Basically, the Sun newspaper told a lie and they were caught out. And they didn't apologise to start with. And I don't think an apology ever would have helped anyway, but yeah, I think it would have maybe have softened the blow a little bit. But the fact is, they were forced to apologise. The editor of the Sun was like, if I have to apologise, I will. That's saying that he has to apologise means he doesn't want to apologise, which means he doesn't think he's done anything wrong. So for me, I think not selling the Sun in Liverpool is an absolutely massive statement, and I think it's vitally important that we continue to boycott the Sun. I'll never forget being in school, and a history teacher of mine would tell us the different ways of vandalising the Sun newspaper and reasons why not to buy it, and we did an entire lesson in school on Hillsborough and the effects it had and the effects that the Sun newspaper had on people's perceptions of it.
People just didn't buy it. And I personally would go into a shop, and if they had the sun for sale, I would put something on the counter to buy, and then I'd glance down and see the sun, and I'd say, I'm very sorry, I can't trade with you, I can't buy this off you. Why? Because you're selling the sun. And a lot of people done that. So it was a protest, and what we tried to do was encourage shop owners to not to sell it, advertise that they didn't sell it, and praise them. So instead of shouting at them or denigrating them, what we decided to do was to praise them. So when a shopkeeper put a sign in his window to say we don't sell the sun, we would encourage our members to shop there and to boycott the ones that did.
Well, back before the 15th of April 1989, we had 3 newspapers in our house all the time. That was the Daily Star, the Sun and the Liverpool Echo. After the 15th of April, the Sun never came into our house again, and my dad just bought the Daily Mirror after that, so we got the Echo and the Daily Mirror, and obviously we never ever wanted anything to do with the Sun newspaper after that.
When the people of Merseyside, well, as Bill Kenwright, and he won't mind me saying this, turned round and said at one of the anniversaries they picked on the wrong city, and that showed everybody they did pick on the wrong city, because what's good about Merseyside is we do stick together, especially on like a tragedy like ours, but also any injustice. You'll find the Liverpool people are absolutely brilliant. And when I say Liverpool people, I'm not talking about Liverpool the club, who has been brilliant. I'm talking about the whole of Merseyside.
Media sources apologised the next day for their false fabrications, apart from the Sun, who did not apologise until September 2012.
Too late.
23 years after the tragic event. What did you think about their apology, and why do you think it took them so long to apologise?
It wasn't an apology. It was just a cop-out, and far too little, far too late.
Mackenzie, getting an interview not a couple of years ago, he said he was forced to apologise.
It wasn't an apology. They just basically said we got it wrong. They didn't say I'm sorry for the hurt. They didn't say any of that. There are certain letters which I've got copies of when people within the Sun were replying to Liverpool fans who wrote to them, protesting, and some of the responses were just awful, just crass, entrenched, unwilling to listen, didn't accept the level of proof that what they said just didn't occur.
Do you think the fake news that was published in 1989 has had a negative impact on the younger generation in the country on their understanding of Hillsborough now in 2018?
Yeah, 100%. I think people who are not from Liverpool or who have not been directly involved with Hillsborough, they don't understand quite how big the cover-up was and to what lengths and extent the cover-up was. So obviously, it wasn't just the police or the media, but it was also the government who were all in on falsifying documents and burying the truth as much as possible and blaming it on people from Liverpool and the Liverpool supporters. So I feel like, younger people don't really know the truth. All of the truth's out there, and it's been a massive media sensation last year and the year before. I still don't think people really understand what happened that day.
I do. I say I don't see it as much now, but the likes of Twitter, you still people saying murderers, murder your own and stuff like that. Little comments like that. They may not mean it, but they say it. Yeah. And that's the effect of what the fake news is carried all this time. It's ingrained in people that's what they think happened.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even true.
Can you give me a taste of how the process was of the inquest and the prosecutions? Was you happy with the result at the end of it?
I think that question was asked to me when I came out on the last day. And I think I'll give the same answer as what I gave them. I was Obviously, very, very happy to see the 96 getting the correct verdict. We try and have a bit of peace in our lives for the rest of the years that we spent fighting. And to me, that annoys me, because it wasn't just me, but you know, when you've been there from day one, from the very beginning of Hillsborough, and to this day now, we're still here because we've still got a bit of a journey to do. What a disgrace. No fault whatsoever of ours. If they did give the right verdict all them years ago, looked at the truth, looked at the evidence, listened to the people who were there, it would have been well done and dusted.
I always knew that the truth would come out, but the day it came out, I actually felt so much relief. It was unreal. Never ever felt like that before. It was the strangest feeling. I actually felt like I'd been vindicated, but I've never felt like that, or never thought it felt like that. But I actually felt like I walked out of court a free man. That's how I felt. It was very strange. But I'd say it's happened to other people far worse than me. And I was just there. I was just a bystander, you know what I mean?
It's been said a few times, you picked on the wrong city, and they did.
Yeah.
So we in the end, the truth prevailed. And that's all anyone ever asked for.
How important do you think it is to fight fake news? Do you think the younger generation should all be educated on the 27-year inquest of the Hillsborough disaster? Do you think it is important for everyone to know the truth?
Yes, everybody should be reading Hillsborough the Truth and looking at the documentaries that have been made and the films that have been made. Absolutely.
So this is the end of my documentary, and I hope you found it interesting, or I've intrigued you to be more involved about Hillsborough. But it's not just about football, it's about the fight for justice. People need to fight to get the truth, and people need to fight to get justice. I hope this video shows that, and I hope this video also proves the lies wrong and informs people what should be known about Hillsborough.
Houses never buy the sun. Tabloids making money, betting bollocks baffles brains, and they cynically hold up their hands if anyone complains. And they say all we're doing is giving people what they want. Well, they're crying out for justice, people crying out for justice, and the man they call the digger casts a proprietary eye over what happens in the gutter and what goes on in the sky. And he claims he's fit and proper, and the watchdog sings his song, but Scousers never buy the sun.